Hello, good afternoon. My name is Gideon Jude. I'm happy to see every one of you, and this is a special edition of a program organized by the Girne American University in Cyprus, the global campus of the University of Arizona. We're very excited to have you today. For our viewers watching everywhere, this is a very joyful moment for all of us. And today we have a special edition in the program, and we're discussing the role of the youth in nation building. We understand that most of us are students, and as students, we know how valuable we are. Most of us are youth. And today we want to be looking at what it means to be a youth, and then how can a youth contribute to the development of their nation. I'm very much excited to be here today, and with me I have a very distinguished guest. He's Barrister Samuel Chukwu. Barrister Samuel is a legal practitioner with specializations in research and advocacy and clinical legal education. He has represented Nigeria on international platforms for debate, notably the International Client Counseling Competition in Nebraska, USA in the year 2015. He has also represented the country in the African rounds of the International Humanitarian Law Competition held in Arusha, Tanzania. So you're welcome, and we are happy to have you. We'll be knowing more of you, Mr. Samuel. If you are with us, you're very welcome. Yes, Mr. Samuel. Thank you so much for being here. We are happy to have you. I would want to leave it to you to just introduce yourself and just tell us who you are. I've just said a little fraction of what you're doing, but feel free to tell us who you are and what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes, so tell us what tell us more about yourself. Tell us more
Thank
what you do.
Hello.
Yes, go
The
on.
pleasure is mine. Thank you for having me.
Yes, Mr. Samuel, if you can hear me.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, fine. I can.
Good. So the floor is yours. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and the projects that you're doing. I have a little bit of what you've written, several things that you're engaged into. We want to hear from your mouth. Just tell us what you are doing.
So can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, if you can hear me, I say thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here this evening, and I bring you greetings all the way from Abuja in Nigeria. And I see Nigerian people that are listening to me. Together, we are.
Okay, I think we're having problems hearing you. If you can hear me, please just signify. But seeing the role of youth in nation, and that is the focus of what we are discussing today. To our viewers, we are happy to have you. Like I said once again, today we are actually looking at what role do the youth have in the building of their nation. As a youth, we used to know. Growing up as a child, I used to be told, I'm still said, I'm still being told that you are the future. You have the future is in your hands. And so we want to understand today, what does it really mean to be a youth in this day? So I'll leave it to our guest, who's a legal consultant and an entrepreneur. I want to hear from him. What do you think, or what does it mean to be a youth? Okay, Mr. Sam, if you can hear us, can you hear us? Please signify if you can hear us, Mr. Brown.
Yeah, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear. I can hear you. So I've just asked the, I've just asked the question. I've just put the question to you.
Okay, please.
Okay, the
Yeah.
question
Yes,
is:
please.
growing up as a child, we've always been told we are the leaders of tomorrow. We are the future of tomorrow, and we are young. And sometimes we have to have the perspective in understanding what this really means. So, if you don't mind, you tell
Yes.
our viewers, what does it mean to be a youth?
All right then. So first and foremost, thank you for having me. And like I said, greetings all the way from Abuja in Nigeria, and to my Nigerian people that are listening to me, we hello. All right, we did together, and this topic is a very important one because whether we like it or not, the youths have a role to play, not just in nation building, but in the building of world affairs. And permit me to demystify some myths today. And number one is just a statement that you've mentioned, Mr. Gideon, the fact that youths are the future leaders of tomorrow. And I beg to differ. I beg to differ. Because there's a proverb, there's an African proverb, the day a person wakes up, that is when we start to greet good morning.
That's right.
It is when the youths can wake up to the realization of what they have, or rather, because I'm a youth, what we have within us, would understand that we are not just the leaders of tomorrow, we are the leaders of the present. The
That's
truth is this: until we get to understand the potency of what we carry within us, we would keep believing that we have a tomorrow that is never promised. A famous writer once said, "We do not have tomorrow, what we have is today." And until we can harness what we have today, we would keep hoping for it tomorrow. So this reminds me of a joke that we usually tell in Nigeria of a certain restaurant. I know you have eat out spots over there in Cyprus where people come, and because the owner of the restaurant wants to avoid debtors, people who owe what we call base in Nigeria. So the owner put an inscription, says no credit today, come tomorrow, meaning you cannot come without paying today. So if you come tomorrow, the owner just refers you to the sign, no credit today, come tomorrow. And you notice that tomorrow never finishes. And that is what happens when we are told consistently that we are the future of tomorrow. We keep hoping for a tomorrow that never comes. Secondly, my problem with that statement is the fact that if we do not salvage our today, there
Cannot.
will be no tomorrow. So I think we need to break out from that mindset of being leaders from tomorrow. And in order to do that, one thing that is necessary is the fact that we should start to ask ourselves, what can I start to do today that can guarantee my tomorrow? During the course of our talk, I'll get to let us know some things that we should do. But first and foremost, let us take it out of our minds that we are the leaders of tomorrow. No, we are first and foremost the leaders of today. It may not be on a large scale, but we are leaders today.
Thank you so much for that. Very, I mean, it's very direct. But I want to hold on to the last statement that you just made.
Very, very well.
That statement was that it must not be in a large scale. You know, it can start from small scale. I've just gone
Very
through
true.
your profile, and I want you to discuss one or two things regarding your profile. I've seen some of the initiatives
All
that
right then.
you've done initiatives with school children. You've gone on debates internationally out of the country, and it also says that you were an executive assistant in the office of the current vice president of the country. So I understand this is a platform, it's a very international platform for African students and international students entirely. But one thing we know is that we can learn from our experiences. It does not matter where we are. So I want to talk to you. I want you to talk about your experiences. What are some of the experiences that you've had, especially in a smaller scale, that have brought you to what you are doing today?
Okay,
Yes,
Mr.
if
Jude,
you
can you
can.
hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Speak on.
So the line just broke. If you just re-ask the questions, you are laying a background as to some of the things I have done.
Exactly. So, looking at the things that you've done quite a number of things, and I want you to
Yes.
put it on
So
this last statement you made
um,
was this.
I said just to re-ask the question. matter you leave the background. Just re-ask the question so I answer it from there.
Okay, the question is, how did the journey start for you? Looking at the last statements you made in the initial question, you said small scale. How did the journey, where was the beginning of the journey for you?
Okay, sorry, I didn't get that.
Yes.
Sorry.
Where was the beginning of the journey for you? Sorry, I know that there's an internet problem also on your end. Where was the beginning of this journey for you?
Okay, the beginning of the journey for me. Oh, okay, interesting. Okay, well, the first thing I won't do is to write my entire biography yet. Okay, but just to give us a little snippet, I was your usual child that had dreams and hopes. However, at some point in life has a way of boxing your dreams. And for some of us, life has been a fight. Many of us were not born with a silver spoon. Some were even looking for a wooden spoon in those days. But what life has taught me is the fact that life does not give you what you deserve. Life gives you what you negotiate from life. And I
Wow.
learned that at a very early part of my life. Okay, I grew up in Abuja, and there's this perception that when you're in a capital city, you're living in affluence and opulence, but that was not the case. I'm from a very modest background, and God bless my parents for the efforts they've put in. However, there's a point a person gets to, and that is a point of self-awareness. And I got to that point very early in my life, where I realized that I was created for something. I didn't know what it was, but I knew I was made for something. So what did I start doing? I started reading. I think at a very early age, I had read about Nigerian history. I knew the presidents, prime ministers, and then I even went as far as reading about American history too, because I was interested whenever I watched the movies. And I noticed something: the level of knowledge a person has is directly proportional to the level of awareness the person will have about himself or herself. So because I kept reading books about the world, about history, whenever I watched the movies, I was very inquisitive and inquisitorial. I noticed that my awareness expanded. But one thing is this: knowledge can be a burden or a blessing. So it was a blessing in that I became self-aware, but it also became a burden because at a certain point I had everything there was to life. And that was where life started to box me in the face. Experiences started coming to deflate the tires of the perceptions that I had about myself. So moving forward, as I moved higher into school, I noticed that the world was bigger than me. And I decided to find out what my exact purpose was. And trust me, I did not get a direct answer. And to my friends who are listening to me today, many of us are waiting for direct answers to lead us to the point of our purposes. But the answer to purpose is in the various experiences of life that you encounter. So for me, I met people, I met friends. There were certain friends that helped, and there were certain friends that did not help. But God being so kind, the friends that helped were able to channel me through the right part. And let me also say something: never underestimate the role of mentors. Never underestimate the role of Isaac Newton, the great scientist. That far today is because I'm standing on the shoulder of giants. For many of us who are young people, we downplay the role of certain persons. Now, trust me, those persons may not be your superstars. It's just like in the movies. I don't know if you've watched Karate Kid. If you watch Karate Kid, you'll see that every Jaden Smith needs a Jackie Chan. Every hero needs a certain guide. And I know there were certain guides that were on my path through life who have guided me and are still guided me. So when I got to the university, I got to a point where I felt like giving up. Because trust me, the university it's the reason why it's called a university. It is a universe within a city. Okay, you see, the whole universe is compressed. What you have in the outside world, it's compressed within a small enclave. And when I got to the university, life punctured some of my own thinkings. But one of the greatest skills I think every young person should have should be adaptability. I
That's true.
adapted, but in adapting, I did not lose focus of my ideals, and opportunities came. All right.
Okay,
So
let me
as
just
you
end.
open up to life, as you adapt to life, you need to be receptive to opportunities that would come. And trust me, they will come.
Right. You spoke about mentors, and this is a very important subject that I want you to actually elaborate on. Uh,
Okay.
as we go further in the discussion, we'll also talk about how youth can come into the political space and how much have African
Okay.
countries, for instance, accepted youth,
All
or
right.
have they embraced youth into the political sphere as well. So these are some of the discussion. But to take on what you
Very
discussed
true.
specifically on mentorship, how
Yes.
important do you think mentorship is in building a youth? Because first, before a
Yes.
youth will be a nation builder, the person should be able to have a level of self-building.
Yes.
They should be able to build themselves. From what you said, knowledge is very important. Knowledge is very key. So that means, from your experience, we have to first build ourselves as youth, and then we
Very
can come
true.
to then building the nation. So, what is the role of mentorship
Very true.
in the life of a youth?
Mentors.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Okay. Very, very good question, Mr. Gideon. The role of mentorship can never, ever be downplayed. The role of mentorship or mentoring, as we like to, the reason there is nothing that we are trying to do that has not been before. The challenge of every generation is to look for unique recurring questions. So, for instance, we're miles apart and we are communicating. Communication is not new, has always communicated. What has evolved process as to the role of mentoring? I quote before, which I would restate, and then I'll give a new quote. The first quote is the one I love so well by Isaac Newton. For those in the science field, we all through the whole apple falling on his head, the gravity and all. So when people like that speak, we need to listen to them. Isaac Newton said that the reason why I can see far is because I am standing on the shoulders of giants. In Africa, we have a proverb as to what a elder can see sitting down, a young person will not see,
That's
even if you climb the tallest Iroko tree. So of course, we are not meant to accept everything a mentor tells us hook, line, and sinker, because experiences might differ. All right. The principles.
Yeah, I think we lost your connection there, Mr. Samuel. If you're back, just let us know. We lost his connection. Anyways, for our viewers, you've heard what he said. Particularly, he started by saying that we need to start small. If you want to change your nation, there's always a little part of it that you can start with. Most of the times, I see people young like me wanting to change the nation are not willing to start small. For example, you might be in class and you don't want to lead in class, or you don't want to lead in your life. You don't want to lead in your house, in your apartment. So these are pitfalls that will not allow us to reach the leadership mindset that we have, or the leadership goal that we have at the long run, and that is to change the nation. So whoever desires to change a nation will need to start small, just like we've heard from our guests. Starting small, like he said, we've seen his portfolio and we've seen his profile, engaging in several activities just to ensure that he fulfills the purpose and he adds more value to the nation. So life is more about value than anything. Any life that is not adding value is not worth living. That is a wise quote from a wise person. And then secondly, he mentioned to us the role of mentorship. And particularly, he quoted saying, there's a popular quote that says that I can see far because I'm standing on the shoulders of people who have gone ahead of me. So if you want to see far, then you need mentors to guide you, whether in politics, whether in economics, whether in education, you need mentors. What are the advantages of mentors? Mentors have actually gone this journey before us, and they can be able to assist us in several things that we can learn from the mistakes of mentors. Apart from that, mentors serve as a guide to us to the destiny that we have, or to the goal of building our nation. And I know our viewers are actually viewers from different countries and with different experiences. But the truth is that the principles of nation building stay the same. It does not matter the country that you are in. The same principle, the same discipline, the same adaptability that our guests mentioned earlier is still going to be applicable to all of us. I wish our guests will be back soon to join us because of the connection problems. But definitely, there are a lot that we can learn from the short contributions that our guest has given us so far. And I'm very intrigued seeing what our guests have actually been doing, developing himself and adding value to himself. And I think he said that also in his short introductory speech. He emphasized the role of adding value, adding value. So I think this is a big message that the youth of today, my fellow people, because I'm a youth also, would need to bear in mind and would need to apply with all regards and with all respect. So we need to be able to add value in every area that we can. And from what he said, value is what we can start adding in small ways that we can. Then we gradually grow ourselves to becoming what we want to become. Yes. So while we wait for our guests, so we would also welcome as much as questions you would have. You can send them on the chat box. We'll be happy to have the question. Okay, our guest is back. Mr. Samuel, can you hear me? Please let me know if you can hear me.
Yes.
All right. Okay, speak on. So before you left, before the internet disconnected, where you spoke about the role of mentorship in nation building. Our viewers are from different countries, very different countries. Do you think that there's principles for nation building? Like you've mentioned, first of all, we need to start small. Secondly, you've mentioned also that we need to add knowledge to ourselves. So we need to add value to ourselves so that we can add value to society. So, and then you mentioned mentorship. So three things. Do you think these principles are applicable everywhere, despite the country, despite the background? I'm happy you said you spoke about your background. You're not from a rich family, so to say, a middle class family. Do you think these principles stay the same, irrespective of the countries that we come from?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. So speak. Yes, speak on. So the question is, do you think the principles that you mentioned are universally applicable? Yes, I can hear you. So do you think the principles you've mentioned are universally applicable despite the countries that our viewers will be coming from? Because our viewers are coming from diverse countries. Yes, speak on. I can hear you perfectly. Okay, so I think our guest.
Is this better now? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Speak on. Speak on. It's better.
Okay. All right. I apologize in advance. Really, network connectivity issues.
Okay, no problem.
To yours,
yes,
it's a challenge, and it's one of the realities that we must face. However, I would think it takes to change a life may not. It could just be that one will hold on to and say, okay, these words propelled me. So just before I continue, can you re-ask the question about the applicable principles? So I don't ad lib. Can you just re-ask the question if you can hear me?
Right. From the valuable contributions that you've made, I've just been able to pick out three principles that you've mentioned. The first principle is they need to start
Yes, so
small. And this is going to be very important to our viewers. The second principle you mentioned is knowledge, basically adding value to ourselves. And thirdly, you emphasize on the need for mentorship. Now, I'm asking, do you think these principles that you've mentioned are universally applicable? Because our viewers are from different countries. Are these principles applicable even to the countries that they are coming from? Yes, if you can hear me, I can. If you can hear me and if you understood the question, feel free to speak on. Okay, please let me know whenever you can hear me, so that our viewers can also benefit from your valuable contributions. Please let me know if you can hear me. Can you hear me now, Mr. Sam? Okay, I cannot hear you. In case you are, I can see you speaking, and I can see your movements, but I cannot hear you.
Okay, can you hear?
Yes, I can hear you
me
now. Exactly. Speak on. Yes, if you're talking,
I've unmuted now. Can you hear me?
yes, I can hear you. Speak on, please. Okay, it seems we're still having problems hearing Mr. Samuel. Please let us know anytime that you are back. And I also want to bring another issue to the youth, especially the youth in the international sphere. How much have we been able to see our countries embrace youth in politics? In the area of politics, do you think your country has really embraced youth serving in the political sphere? So if you have comments, please drop it on the comment box. Feel free to try to type whatever you think the answer will be for your country. Do you think African countries, for instance, for the international students, do you think your country has been able to embrace youth in politics? Have we seen more youth in politics in your country, for instance? So feel free to drop that in the chat box. If it's a yes, if you can just say a yes and tell us the country that you're coming from, that will also be great. And we also see examples, for instance, in some of the African countries, we see young people trying to come up to serve in political spheres. For instance, the office of the president. Just recently, we saw Bobby Wine in Rwanda contesting for the office of the president against President Museveni. So these are some of the reactions that we've seen, especially in the African soil, increasing interest of the youth to participate in politics. And whether or not the ground is tilled enough, or whether or not the ground is very, adaptable to them, is a question that we need to ask ourselves. But definitely, the youth cannot be silenced forever. We've also seen youth increasing in power in different ways. For example, as a university, Girne American University is proud to actually have students and graduates who have done outstanding things in their own areas of interest. For instance, we have a graduate, Benny, I beg your pardon, Gossi. Gossi is a Nigerian who is also rated by Forbes as one of the, leading entrepreneurs in Africa. So these are proud things that we can see all over the world, and these are joyful moments that we can see for the youth. Yes, Mr. Sam, if you are back, please let me know. It's better. I can hear you also.
All right then. So please, apologies all the way from Africa. We know that the network challenge it's a universal issue, but it's very peculiar to us. Like I was saying before the line went off, in meetings like this, sometimes it may not be the whole sentence that would be the life-changing thing. It could be just a statement that a person needs to propel the person from where the person is to where the person wants to be. So I want to thank you for your patience, and I also want to commend the students' body for organizing this, because whether we like it or not, this future that we seek will not be handed over to us if we do not negotiate it. And this meeting is a testament to the fact that we are ready to negotiate our future. Secondly, I want to appreciate those who have turned up. You know, it is not easy. You left every other thing that should be a priority. And trust me, this investment you're making into your lives, it's something that would go beyond the now, would go even to the nearest and the farthest of future. So thank you for having me.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Thank you once again. Okay, before the internet went off,
Yes.
I was asking on the universal application of the principles that you've mentioned. I've
Yes,
been able to
very,
pick out three principles. For
very
instance,
well.
starting small, and then impacting knowledge to your own self, and then mentorship. So
Yes.
our viewers are from different countries, and
All right.
so talk about the application of these principles.
All right then. So why do we talk about starting small? The reason is this. Many dreams have died because those who had these dreams were thinking that they needed to start them on a very large scale. You know, when you ask people, do you want to change the world? They tell you yes. And how do you want to change the world? They start to think of very massive projects. But if you look through history, one thing that history has taught us is that those who changed the world are those that were crazy enough to believe that they could, and they started small. Time will fail me to start to mention some of the people we look up to. You know, the Nelson Mandelas, the Barack Obamas, the Malala Yousafzais. You see, and
Uh,
the truth is this: to be a world changer, the world does not discriminate as to your age. If you are ready to change the world, you can start with what you have, where you are. Start with your little circle. You know, when we talk of leadership, the first form of leadership is your ability to lead yourself.
that's right.
Once you can lead yourself, trust me, there are people who will follow you. All right. So start small. You could be it could be within your dormitory, right? It could be within your classroom, all right? And remember that leadership is about service. Once you start to serve, then you're a leader. All right. So that's the first step, starting small. Then another thing we should do is to invest in ourselves. And the reason why we should invest in ourselves is this: it's a principle that applies even in relationships. You can only bring what you have. Lawyers, there's this Latin quote we have. It says, "Nemo dat quod non habet." You cannot
Yes.
give what you do not
What
have.
you do.
So if you do not have value, you cannot give value. And trust me, the reason why, especially in Africa, right? I say this in a very sober way because I'm an African and I'm speaking from. The reason why we have a deficit of leadership is this: we have many leaders that were not ready when the responsibility of leadership was thrust upon them. And so when they did not invest in themselves, this is what happened. Ignorance was amplified on a very large scale. So whereas they will have made mistakes, and you know, when you make small mistakes, the consequences might be small. But when you get to that pedestal of leadership, when you make mistakes, it is on a global scale.
Okay.
The reason why we
Right.
must invest in ourselves is because you may not have that scepter of leadership on a large scale, but when you invest in yourself, this author, Malcolm Gladwell, speaks about the 10,000 hours rule. That if you want to be an expert in something, you must have spent time
Then,
consistently in that thing. And guess what
mm,
I noticed about the 10,000 hour rule? When a man is investing in himself, the world may not know. But when he continues and his time of manifestation comes through, at that point, he's becoming an expert in that field. And that is where it coincides with his manifestation. So if
yes,
you're watching
let
me
me just
today,
hold you on that. Let me
yes,
just hold you on that word. Do you
please,
think, because from what you've said, it does not mean that, I mean, we still have youths who are passionate and who are
yes,
actually developing themselves and
yes,
actually doing all that you've said, all these principles that you've said. But do
very
you
well.
think, for instance, taking the case study of the African soil, do you think the
Yes.
African soil has been able to give that encouragement and that platform for the youths to actually manifest this investment?
This is a very deep philosophical question you just asked me, because
the facts speak for itself. If you look at the level of leadership in the so-called civilized world, because I believe the whole world is civilized by now, you would see that there's a disparity, right, comes to posts and positions. Okay, we all know that in the Western world they are more amenable to leadership at a very young age, but in Africa, this has not always been the case. And I can give you a very brief preview of African history. In the 60s and 70s, you had young Africans that took the bull of leadership by the horn. The more recent was of blessed memory, Jerry Rawlings of Ghana, all right, who was passed on. You had Thomas Sankara of Burkina Faso. You have even in Nigeria, Yakubu Gowon, and so many leaders. And one I admire so much is Paul Kagame of Rwanda. And if you check out, these leaders were of a very young age, but they did not let their age become a hindering factor. Now, this is where the misnomer is. This is where the problem is. The problem is that the current set of African youth, and I include myself, we want leadership to be handed on to us. But if you look through history, leadership is never deliberately handed over to a generation.
Right.
Now, I am not advocating for violence, because violence is an ill wind that blows no one any good. But I am saying, like I said before, I've said consistently, life would not give you what you deserve. Life gives you what you negotiate. If you look at people like Nelson Mandela, they were ready to pay certain prices for leadership, because leadership comes with a price. Look at people like Paul Kagame. Paul Kagame was ready to lay down his life. Remember that Kagame was a refugee in Uganda, right?
Yeah. Yes,
He was
that's right.
to make an alliance with a leader, that's Yori Museveni, whom I will
Yeah.
come shortly to.
Yeah.
You understand? These were young people. They took the Robert Mugabe. They were all young people when they took the reins of leadership. However, what happened is this: the next generation, right, did not seem to show forth that readiness. And guess what happened? The older generation used that as an excuse to deprive the present generation of the reign of leadership. Because remember, leadership is never, never handed over on a platter. You must show, if you check out our cultures in Africa, you would see that when a person comes to adulthood, there are certain
Yeah.
rituals and tests you must pass,
Mm.
right? And once you're shown that you've passed those tests, right, you can then be welcomed into adulthood. But if you check out, those tests are very rigorous. And what I'm saying to young people today is this: if we keep waiting for leadership to be handed over, it won't be handed.
It's
But
a-
we should not
I'm
rely
going
on
to,
violence.
I'm going to hold you on that one. Now, I have a question on the chat box, and
Yeah,
the question is coming from Tochukwu Godson. How
yeah,
do youths beat the ills of godfatherism while seeking mentors, especially in politics? Now, we know that godfatherism is something very, very common in African politics. I don't
very
think
true.
it's only in African politics, but in global politics. But
Very
we
true.
can speak for the society that we are very familiar with. Godfatherism plays a big role. Now, how can you beat these ills of godfatherism and seek your and find and penetrate your way into politics?
Very beautiful question from Mr. Tochukwu. Very beautiful question. And I like what you just stated, Mr. Gideon. Godfatherism is not necessarily an African thing.
No, it's
All
not.
right.
It's not.
Godfatherism is a universal global concept, though unofficial. However, the problem is this: in Africa, we tend to be very sentimental and a bit parochial in our use of godfatherism. Okay. And for African youths, the first step is not necessarily to beat godfatherism. That should not be the aim. The aim should be to use it as a pedestal to get to positions of leadership. Now, it
Mhm.
sounds counterintuitive, but it is very strategic. Truth is this: as it is in Africa, right? You can come as an outsider. Truth is, outsiders face a whole level of rigorous opposition. But let me give an example, a very funny example. You know, I did a really little study of Kagame during the pandemic. I love that man. I say it
Right.
without hesitation, because that man is an embodiment of the hope that in Africa we can develop ideas that can change a nation,
I share
right?
the same view with you. Yeah.
Thank you
Go
so
on.
much. Thank you so much. So, what did Kagame do? Remember, Kagame and his friend of blessed memory, Fred, that's of Rwanda, right? They aligned with Mr. Museveni in Uganda. So the first step is alliance building. Build what we call networking. You need to make the right network. For instance, you want to be a leader, but you're not friends to persons who are currently in leadership at different levels. I'm not saying you should suck up to them, but you need to build certain alliances. It can be as little as building an alliance with your class rep in class. See, leadership is both a science as well as an art. Learn how leadership happens. Learn politics, not necessarily in the do or die or sinister way, but build alliances. Paul Kagame built alliance, and he started from being a refugee, and he got into a position of power. Trust me, your ideas, no matter how beautifully crafted they may be, will not see the light of day until you are on a platform where you can speak and you will be heard. If not, you will be like the so-called SJW, social justice warriors on Twitter, that would shout from today to tomorrow and no one will listen. Build alliances, all right? And as you build alliances, the next thing you need to also do is to position yourself. So number one, build alliances. Number two, position yourself.
All right.
Kagame never had
hold on to that answer.
Okay.
So that we can also get more responses from
No problem.
viewers.
No problem.
So the first point you mentioned is building alliances, and what I can take from that is that you don't have to partner with people that are in big positions for the start.
Exactly.
Start with that you mentioned, the classmates you have. It can be anybody that is around of you. And I want to mention something. You just spoke about Museveni. I think you've mentioned his name twice or three times now. It's a very controversial issue right now, regarding Bobby Wine and Museveni. These are two people. I mean, for us as youth, most of us would want to pledge support for Bobby Wine being the presidential candidate. At that time for Rwanda. But looking at this, don't you think the Bobby Wine versus Museveni narrative is a show of what the African system is, not giving youth the opportunity to showcase themselves, especially in the political environment?
Yes, very. Let me add an adjective to that word. An adverb rather. It's not just a show; it is an unfortunate show, an unfortunate one. Unfortunate in the sense that what is happening in Uganda is what the English people will call a microcosm of the macrocosm. It is an expansion of a universal reality on the African continent. And when I cited the example of how Museveni was about 38 or thereabout, and coincidentally that's the age of Bobby Wine now.
Exactly.
He decided to oppose Milton Obote. Milton Obote and Museveni had come together to fight the great Idi Amin, right? The infamous Idi Amin, right? And then Milton Obote became a dictator. Museveni, along with other youths, decided to take their future back violently, right? However, Wine has chosen not to commendably take the violent part. And this is where the problem is. In Africa, there is a lack of a structure of mentorship. There is a lack of a structure. If you check out in the wider world, right? For instance, in Germany, there were talks about 2 years ago of Angela Merkel. She stepped down from her role, and there was someone else that was being mentored. If you look at the UK, starting from the time of Winston Churchill, right, to Aden, to Margaret Thatcher, to John Major, to Tony Blair, up to the Boris Johnson, there is some level. For instance, the Labour Party, when they had this issue with Jeremy and all, you see the structures coming in to play. Even in the US, where you have a president that is a septuagenarian, that's in the present person of Joe Biden, you still have younger persons. You have Marco Rubio, you have AOC, right? They are all there. But in Africa, it's unfortunate. And it is most unfortunate because, for instance, you would expect someone like Museveni to have gone into retirement so that the younger ones, he can act as an elder statesman. All right. So every young African should see this as a wake-up call. Remember, we said that leadership will not be handed over to us, but we should not be violent about it. What we should do is to think of strategic ways to which we can place ourselves in those positions one step at a time.
Okay, wonderful contribution on that. But once again, looking at this same African narrative. Do
Yes,
you
please.
think the youths are prepared for leadership today?
That question is a very pregnant question. All right. Do I think we are prepared? For me, if you ask me, I would say, however, this is my there's a caveat attached to that, yes. More often than not, if you've been in a family before where the breadwinner passed on, right? Passed on, you will notice that the members of the family rose up to the occasion as a general
Yes.
rule. So you see a child who was a boy, but when daddy passed on, he metamorphosed into manhood. See, it is responsibility that brings forth the wings on which people would fly. And the truth be told, it is true that the African youth can do better. It is true that we can do better. But however, as we are in Africa, I believe there are certain young persons who, as we speak, are studying leadership, who are taking up responsibility. Okay? The youth in Africa are ready. However, there is still much to be desired. Because when you go online, go on social media, you'll see that there's a current lack of political orientation amongst African youth. The reason why people like Museveni and Kagame and the rest could rise up to the occasion was because they were well informed. There was a wave in those days of Marxism, of capitalism, amongst the youths. However, in current trends, because of technology, and I'm not blaming it on technology, I'm just saying that the trends we see are tilting more to the entertainment sphere. All right. The youths
Right.
are ready. We need to do better, and we can do better, really.
Right. I mean, talking about entertainment, I was saying to someone some times ago, I said
Yeah.
anything that happens in our countries, for
Yeah.
instance, instead of we to take it serious,
Yes.
somebody just comes with a comedy that pours down the whole, seriousness of everything. Somebody will just make it a comedy and everybody laughs about it. And then we
Yes.
actually forget. Sometimes we do forget.
Yes.
I understand that for some, it's a way just to ease the tension.
Yeah.
And
Comic
I
relief.
say something. There are lots of youths here, or some of them might be watching, or a lot of youths out there who have
Yes.
actually given up in their countries. For some of them, a lot of youths now we have youths, especially African youths, trying to pass through, go to Europe,
Yes.
go to somewhere else. They have
Yes.
lost in their countries. What would
Yes.
you say in that regard? So, what would be your advice to that?
Well, this is a very personal topic for me because by God's grace, I'm a Nigerian. And every Nigerian, you would know that there is a dilemma, especially for the youth. Because as we speak, Nigeria is undergoing some political and ethno-religious tension,
Yeah.
so to speak. And of course, there are opportunities inviting us to come outside the country. And truth be told, it's really tempting for every Nigerian because no one is really proud of what is going on. However, I'm also of the school of thought that if all we do is to leave the country, right? The countries we're going to were not built by angels. Even the United States, there was a time when things got so bad that it was called the Wild Wild West. In the 60s, Martin Luther King Jr. was murdered in the US. In the 60s, John F. Kennedy was murdered. In the 60s, Robert Kennedy was murdered. Malcolm X was murdered in the same 60s. Things were rough. But because you still have people that could stand and say, I have a dream. And please don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to sound idealistic. As long as life remains, there is hope. I am a Christian, and I remember a part in scripture where Joseph of Egypt once said, who knows whether it was for a time like this that we were made? Now, what is my point? If there are opportunities to travel, right? Of course you can. But do not forget, there's a reason why nationalities have been apportioned to people. And when you're in a foreign land, truth be told, you will never feel that level of comfort as when you're home. So even if you're moving out, let it be part of a bigger strategy. Nigerian youths, African youths will not lose hope. You know why? Because when you lose hope, there is nothing that can be done. We must
This
believe
is
that
very
something can
interesting.
be
This is very interesting because a lot of youth, I mean, being in the student environment here
done. Yes,
that we are in Cyprus, I've conversed with a lot of youth, and
yes,
a lot of youth will just tell you, I'm trying to just find my way to go somewhere with no
yes,
hope of returning home. And sometimes it's very sad to think of how many doctors are leaving Africa, going to the Western world, and it's a form of brain drain.
Brain
And
drain, brain drain.
yes, exactly, for them. So hopefully we can change this narrative. But where do
Yes,
we
yes.
start from as youths? Where do we
Where
start
do we
from?
start
Should
from?
we start from?
Beautiful question. Beautiful question. The first place we should start from is from ourselves. The first place we should start from. For everyone who's listening to me, right, who's under the influence of the sound of my voice, I ask you this question. If leadership were handed over to you right now, are you ready?
Powerful
You know,
question.
it's easy to castigate, criticize, right? But if leadership were given, okay, to bring it home, the little responsibilities that we have, how well are we acquitting ourselves from? So the truth is this, I cited Kagame's example because it was when I studied Kagame, you now see what is happening in Rwanda and why it is happening. When Kagame was a refugee in Uganda, right? There was something in him that kept reminding him that, see, as far as I am not in my country, I do not belong here. He joined the army, and soldiers have special privileges. But you know what they did? They left the Ugandan army into Rwanda to confront the dictator. Like I said, I'm not advocating violent means, but I'm advocating strategic means. What Nigerians in the diaspora can do is this, right? You have the benefit of being in an environment where you see how proper things can be done. Africans have the benefit of being in, very enlightened environments. You can start to form think tanks, groups that can start to think and say beyond political showmanship, what can be done in the African situation. All right. Please and please, the worst thing that can happen to us is to give up hope. Because when you give up hope, guess what happens? You're allowing the sun, to set at midday. And as youth, our sun cannot set at midday. No, it cannot. As long as life remains, we must have hope that the Africa that is filled with natural potential, human potential, no matter how bruised or battered she may be, that Africa's sun can rise again.
Wow, very inspiring. For our viewers, this is very, very inspiring. The question all of us should ask ourselves is, if the mantle of leadership is handed to us today, or if we are and I think everybody is in one area of leadership or the other.
Very true.
Now, for us to know where to start from, the leadership positions and the leadership functions that we are given today, how well are we handling them? And this actually is a powerful question that we need to ask, especially for those of us who have given up on ourselves and given up on the countries. The powerful question to ask is, if you were given the mantle of leadership today, how well will you perform? Not even thinking, because Barrister Sam said, no one hands it over to you. So basically, what is in your hands today, and how well are you actually working with what is in your hands? For our viewers, please, if you have a question you want us to ask before we leave, please feel free to send in those questions and send in your comments also. This is getting very, very inspiring, and I'm very happy to have Barrister Sam also here. Barrister Sam, I want you to share some of your experiences. I spoke about your experiences in the beginning of the show, but because the internet was cutting in and out, I'd want you to just retrace some of them. Also, I've seen you do a lot of project work. Going through your profile, you've been going to schools to meet school children, and you've been doing several things actually. I don't know if you are paid for that, and you have a foundation also. But I want to ask, what is your motivation in doing all of these things that you're doing?
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let me start from the last question as to what motivates me. The truth is this: I'm not currently in government. All right, and it's very easy to think, oh, I should wait until I'm in a position of power. We like to use phrases like that. But at a very young age, I discovered that I have a role to play in the scheme of things, not just within my nation, but in world affairs. And the truth is, before you can get to that point where you can be a voice, you can start with whispers in your environment. Whispers. Never underestimate the power of whispers in your environment. Okay. And when I discovered that I had a gift of speaking, I told myself, why wait until you have big platforms? Why not start with the little platform you have? Remembering that it's not about you. but it's about the lives that will be changed. And why did I go to young people, or why do I like to speak to young people? Have you noticed that there's a certain age in life that you get to, and all you can see is pessimism, skepticism, and cynicism?
That's right.
So I discovered that with the young persons, there is that glow. And trust me, it was put in us for a reason. Because I was giving an example about, if you look at the footballing space, right? Look at these football stars. You see that they fall within certain age ranges. Tennis, you see many of them, Naomi Osaka, you see even Tiger Woods, whom we felicitate as to with his injuries and all. You would see that these persons were young. There's something about youth, and I discovered that early. And even though I didn't have the big picture, I told myself, why not start with what you have? And truth be told, even not for lately, as I'm getting older, I've learned to build a structure, and so I can, demand value for value, right?
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
in those days, I would just go to a secondary school, seek for permission, speak to the students, and the results were always the same.
Yeah,
This student,
I've seen one video of you doing just that, and I
yes,
think it's a
very
very
well,
inspiring thing to do, because we can add value in different ways that we can.
very true,
But
very true.
unfortunately, a lot of youths are looking for a big platform to add
A
value, and
big
what
platform, very
happens
true.
is when we get the big platform and we never go through the small platforms, we misbehave
Mm.
when we are given
Mhm.
the
Mm.
big platform. You have a
Very
foundation. I don't know if that's what you call it. It's a foundation. Tell us
okay.
about it.
Okay, so first and foremost, okay, what I have is actually business first. As for the foundation, I volunteer for the foundation, right? The foundation is called Gender Mobile. You could search for it on the net, Gender Mobile. And why I hold Gender Mobile dear to heart, it's owned by the executive director is a Nigerian lady, a young Nigerian lady. Her name is Omowumi Ogunrotimi, and the mandate of the organization is to see that sexual and gender-based violence, right, is alleviated within Africa. And it started in 2017, and it has not been doing badly. And why did I choose to volunteer for Gender Mobile? I also volunteer for other organizations, but primarily I love to volunteer for Gender Mobile, because the truth be told is the problem of sexual violence has become more or less like a norm in Africa, that we even joke about it. We joke about gender-based violence. We see it as, and the truth is, we cannot have justice in leadership without having justice in domestic affairs.
That's right.
And so we go to schools to, educate people on their rights, especially young girls, because the truth is this: Africa would not succeed until it harnesses the potential of its women. All right, until we have a politics of inclusion, we cannot confine them to, as we call the
How do I?
kitchen, the living
Yeah,
room, and the bedroom. No, no,
that's right.
no. We need to understand that there is a level of inclusion in that women need to be included. So that's why I chose to volunteer for Gender Mobile. All right, but
Okay.
besides Gender Mobile, what I primarily do is speaking, trainings, capacity building. Yes.
Good, good, good. There's one question. I received
Okay.
a good question from Mr. Chukwu Godson, and the question is: given the obvious brain and manpower drain situation in Africa, I will want to hear. I mean, he would want to hear us speak about the role of youth in diaspora in building a nation back home. Basically,
Mhm.
what can youths in diaspora? For example, I am not in my country, and a lot
Yes.
of our viewers are students not in their country. How can
Yes.
they what role can they play in building the nation back home? Powerful question.
Powerful, powerful. Very brilliant question, Mr. Chukwu. Thank you so much for bringing a perspective to our discussion. Now, first and foremost, I am not, so I am not misquoted. I'm not saying it is wrong to be in the diaspora, because trust me, the whole earth was created was created by God and all, right? So
Yeah,
it is not wrong to be. What is wrong is being inactive wherever you are, whether at home or in the diaspora.
that's right.
Now, for those in the diaspora, you are already in a strategic position. Have you noticed that in Africa, once you're able to leave the homeland to another land, you have already achieved, it's already seen as an achievement. Now, many people fail in that platform, in that they just take in the accolades and sit there. If you're in the diaspora, know that you're already a role model to someone who is at home. They see it. That's why if you notice, there is a weight of expectation on Africans. They say, send me money. Oh, my brother is in the abroad. You know, use it to brag. They use it to, and it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Now, what you can do is this: you can study. In the diaspora, you see how things work, and it gives you hope that things can work. So study the systems over there. Now, remember, we're not meant to implement them hook, line, and sinker, but look for areas of alignment.
That's right.
Look for areas that such things can be applied. For instance, as I speak to you in Nigeria, you have taxi services. It started with Uber, but you have indigenous taxi services. Right? As I speak to you, you have things like Oga Taxi and so on. In Nigeria, for instance, you had MTN from South Africa coming to Nigeria, but you also have Globacom,
And we have
right?
in Kenya, I saw M-Pesa is there also in Kenya.
M-Pesa in Kenya, very brilliant. So what we can do is this: certain models can be adapted. So those in diaspora, look at how these models can. But you must also note that you must be aware of local politics.
That's right.
The thing is this: you could bring an idea, and that's the testimony of many Nigerians or Africans in diaspora. You bring beautiful ideas, but because you're not aware of how local politics is played, and truth is this, it may not be palatable to you, but if you don't study it, you would not know how to tackle the system. Secondly, one thing Africans in diaspora can do is to form a strong network. When you form a strong network, you can speak to the powers that be. You become, this quote we have in Nigeria where they say people were seated on the table. I was not granted a space, but I brought my own chair to the table. So Africans in diaspora can form strong networks. In Kagame's story, when they were being stopped from coming into the country, what did they do? They formed a pressure group outside, and they started canvassing world opinion. One thing African leaders hate, right? No matter how sinister some of them may be, is that African leaders hate negative publicity. That was why Mobutu Sese Seko in the 70s was still able to host Muhammad Ali and George Foreman in the Rumble in the Jungle. If you remember, African leaders love publicity. So Africans in the diaspora can leverage on that need for publicity to see how they can influence opinions. Thirdly, and we cannot rule out the area of finances. Now, it must not necessarily be your own personal finance. Africans in diaspora can use their positions, right, to rally. You have world organizations, you have influential Africans. They can rally for the African cause. All right. And
Just on
these are
the
ways.
issue of finances that you've just mentioned, and I think
Yes.
that will be my last question for today.
Yes.
Because you mentioned finances and you mentioned international bodies for is
Yes, please.
I was doing a research some years ago regarding the African Union, and I was very disappointed to actually identify and discover that more than 70% of our budget is actually coming from outside. So,
Yes.
what do you think? How do you feel about? Because I believe whoever feeds you controls you.
Very
So
true.
if we are having the budget coming from outside powers, then we cannot even make policies for ourselves. Most of the policies that we are actually operating on are imported policies. So we don't have policies that are actually adapted to our environment. So that will be my last question, and a quick
Yes.
one from you.
Yes, sir. The thing is this. I'll quote Kagame. He's not he's an open secret. I love the man, because when you watch his videos, you see Kagame, see Patrice Lumumba of Congo. Those are thought leaders, and the solutions of Africa, right, can only be solved by Africans. Totally, solutions of Africa, because trust me, anybody that gives you aid, right, also wants to be, the hand that feeds you. And that is why till today, the worst defeat a person can face is to be mentally defeated.
That's right.
Look at the issue of the COVID and the vaccines. Why do we have African nations waiting and folding their hands and waiting, and you're being told, for instance, we heard that Madagascar had the vaccine, and the next thing
Nobody believed it.
nobody believed it. Not even Africans believed it. We have to wait for approval before, but check out how Pfizer and the rest are pushing forward their vaccines, and throwing African countries into more debt. Financial debts now.
Yeah.
What we should do is this. One of the channels I love to watch is National Geographic, because most times when they talk about lions and the rest, it's in Africa. Africa has what it takes to sit on the global committee of nations. But what we lack, which is why I'm glad we have programs like this, is that we need minds that can wake up and think and say enough is enough. Now I'm not advocating for violent struggle. We should be strategic, because where there is a will, there always will be a way. There always will be a way.
Thank you so much, Barrister. I'm going to ask you two final advices.
No problem.
The first advice is to advise people who are non-Africans listening to this program, or that would listen
Yes.
to this program. What would your
Yes.
advice be to people who are non-Africans, international people, because we have students from different places who would be listening to this program? What would your advice be regarding Africa?
Yes. Okay. Well, what I would tell our international friends, and I call them partners, because the truth is that in the journey of development, John Donne, the great Irish poet, once said that no man is an island all by itself. We are all parts of a whole. So the journey towards development must be a collaborative one. All right. So be ready to partner with Africa, not just as a master over a servant, no, but as partners having the same goal. We are on the same ship. You know, when you hear concepts about global warming, climate change, you see, COVID showed us something that, you see, you could be Caucasian, you could be, you could come from various parts of the world and all, but you could be Semitic, but whatever you are, we are all affected by similar causes. So number one thing is that we must learn to collaborate together. Then secondly, the truth is that the problem of Africa can only be solved majorly by Africans. So where do our foreign friends come in, right? You can come into, that helpful collaborative role. Okay, do not hold back when Africa needs you, because tomorrow you would need Africa. We all need ourselves. So our friends too, who are in the diaspora, please network with Africans. Let us network together. As I speak to you, I can proudly say that we have an African as of the World Trade Organization. That is
Yeah,
a
happy
very major
moments. Yeah.
step. Yes, Dr. Mrs. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, who is a Nigerian. But trust me, that is a victory for Africans. It shows us that Africans can do better. So please, our friends who are listening to us, collaborate with us. Collaborate with us. And whenever your assistance is needed, not necessarily financial, it could be technical assistance. Do not do that with an entitlement mindset. The best form of giving is a giving that gives without expecting in return. Okay, do that with a mindset to ensure. Because trust me, if Africa continues to go down the drain, Europe and the Americas will keep facing the migration issue that it's currently facing. All
All right.
right, the issue of terrorism, and also please let us work together to see
Mhm.
that Africa takes its rightful place. And when Africa takes its rightful place, the world will continue to rotate the way it should be.
And finally, from you, what will be your one advice for the Africans and international students watching this program, or that will see this program in the future?
Yes, beautiful. Thank you. For the young Africans who are listening to me, the truth is, we all agree that Africa is not where it should be. We're not going to be idealistic and say that all is well, because all is not well. But the first step to solving a problem is to realize that there is a problem. And we cannot solve new problems with old models of thinking. All right. So, to the young Africans who are listening to me, and I want to speak on a personal note to the individuals listening to me, you have a role to play. You have a role to play, because no matter wherever you are, right, our Creator did not make a mistake by giving us this color of skin or placing us in a continent that is rich with so much abundance, yet dwelling in so much poverty. We have a role to play. Go on the path of self-discovery, but remember that as you discover yourself, there's a larger scale that you have to play. Discover your purpose and help Africa achieve its full potential.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. This is Barrister Samuel Chukwu, legal representative and legal practitioner and entrepreneur. Thank you so much. It's very, very, I'm very excited to hear you, and I'm very excited to be part of this also. And thank you to all our viewers from different places and people who will also see this video in the future time. Thank you for to the technical team who have actually put all of this in place for us, and thank you to the management of the Gideon American University. global campus of the University of Arizona for putting all of this together. It's such a powerful discussion, and we look up to having this. For our viewers, you've had a lot of contributions from our guests. You've had of starting small. You've heard of mentorship. You've heard of adding value to yourself. You've heard of different things that you can actually take to work on. But for me, the important question is, if you are given the opportunity to lead today in the level that you are, what will be the result of your leadership? So this is actually a powerful question that all of us need to go and think about it. Thank you for all of our viewers who have been very interactive in this session, and thank you so much. I'm excited to have you. We hope to look into this again in the future. I'm sure there are several issues that need to be discussed also regarding African politics, African economics, and then in the diaspora as well. Thank you so much. And from us, the management of Gideon American University, want to appreciate all of you. And please stay in line and stay in touch with the upcoming activities and programs that we'll be having. Once again, from all of us, a very, very good night to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.